Hi, everyone. Welcome to PA Podcast, episode 4. I have a special guest today. Somebody I've known for over 30 years, I want to say, or close
Don't make
to,
me sound too old.
right? We were all kids, okay? Dana Azzi.
That's
Dana
me.
Azzi is my guest today, and what a privilege it is for me. Executive MBA, CFA, who specializes in consulting with women entrepreneurs.
Yes.
You're all about women empowerment.
I am indeed. Thank you so much, Priya, for having me on your podcast.
It's my pleasure. You know what? So many people have told me, why don't you have a girl on your show? I'm like, it just didn't happen.
I'm the first one.
You are the first one.
It's a privilege.
The privilege is mine. So, Dana has an executive MBA. She has a CFA. She has worked in 7 countries.
I think last time I counted, it was 8, actually.
8 countries.
Yep.
Which countries are those?
Oh, so I worked in England, in France, in Dubai, so UAE. I worked in the US in New York. I worked in Lebanon. I worked in Canada, obviously, Montreal. Did I miss any? Does that make the count 8?
I'm not sure. Let's go. So we had Lebanon in there.
Lebanon,
We have Dubai,
Dubai,
Paris, France.
Paris, London, Switzerland, Geneva,
Uh-huh.
US, New York,
Yeah,
and Canada. Oh, that's 7.
7. There you go.
So you were right. 7
See?
countries in total.
I did my research.
Ah,
I did my research.
I chose.
Yeah. So tell me, and this is something that I think a lot of women want to hear too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you consult with so many. Now, having gone around the world, I think you've had different experiences between Canada, US, and then the Middle East
Yeah.
and Europe. You've really seen all 4 corners of the world, almost. I guess Asia is missing.
Asia's missing. I did work for an Asian bank at one point, and they sent me to Singapore, but still, I wouldn't count it as my,
Okay.
pure Asian experience. No, I am missing that bit.
All right. Well, we're going to get there soon. So tell me, what between all these 4 countries, what is it that you've learned with regards to women entrepreneurship? How different is it from one country to another? Do they face the same challenges
Mm-hmm.
as they do here? If there are any challenges, I don't know if you want to discuss that.
Well, the interesting thing is when I worked and lived in all of these countries, I was actually full on just in the corporate world. So I hadn't even started to consult with entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So my experience was really based on I really felt a difference in how women interacted in the corporate place, in complete honesty. But when I started working with women entrepreneurs, it was when I was in Dubai. So I mainly worked with women entrepreneurs in Dubai, in Lebanon, and here in Montreal, Canada. And a lot of the challenges I've seen women face are so similar. So similar wherever they are in the world. You would think, say in Canada, we're in a more developed country where, part of the G7, they wouldn't face the same challenges, but they do. Because a lot of them come from themselves
Mm-hmm.
almost. Somehow, every time I meet, most of the time, I don't want to generalize, a male entrepreneur,
Right.
the self-confidence is just, it's like it comes naturally. They're so sure their idea is the next like Apple or the next Facebook. They have so much self-confidence. And women often, even with a great business idea, they have so much self-doubt. So much. And that self-doubt, I've seen it honestly the same, whether it's in North America or the Middle East or in Europe. Women doubt themselves a lot and they don't have the courage to really just go for it.
Isn't it true, though, that in the Middle East, maybe a little bit less in Dubai, because I think that is a little bit of a different environment altogether. When you're looking at Dubai, I mean, 90% expats, you don't
Yeah.
really feel like you're in the Middle East. Maybe not as
True.
much as you would in
Yeah.
Lebanon, maybe, right? And I guess in North America, though, the woman empowerment is very strong. And I'm not so sure if that has made its way to the Middle East or Europe for that matter. I'm not 100% sure. Now, these challenges that you speak of,
Yeah.
is it self-confidence, or is it the way, men position themselves, or is it the way maybe women are a little bit more conservative in their approach, which oftentimes can work to their benefit?
Yeah. Well, having a background in finance, I can tell you one thing that's common, whether it's women, how they deal with their finances and how they deal with their businesses, is women tend to be a little bit more risk averse.
Hmm.
So I think this is where the self doubt comes from. They want to make sure it's a success before they even go ahead and launch their idea. And maybe the self doubt comes from that.
Hmm.
And also, and I know you'll disagree with me on that, but I feel a lot of women, when they're like from the moment they're a little girl and they grow up, they're not as pumped with their confidence by their surroundings, by their parents, by their families. And this is changing. But now, like I see women my age or older, probably the way they were raised, they weren't always told, you can do whatever you want, you can do whatever you want. They were always told, make sure you find a husband, make sure you find someone that you're going to marry, you're going to have a family. So the business side of things, they were not as much encouraged as, let's say, their male counterparts. But things are changing now, obviously.
Right. Now, it's not that I disagree with it. That's not at all what it is. I think, and we've discussed this
Yeah.
briefly in the past, where my thing is that I am all for women empowerment. I think it's extremely important. And as a father of two boys, and congratulations, by the way, if it's all right, I'll say that Dana is expecting, and we're very, very happy for her.
A little
A
girl.
little girl, go figure.
Yeah.
Go figure. And that's great. And I think that that's important to give that message that they should be able to, that women need to explore more, that they need to be more outgoing.
And that they can achieve anything they want to achieve.
And I think that goes without saying for everyone.
Yeah.
However, as a father of two boys, now I'm not discounting that this is important for women. And I do feel like culturally, perhaps in the past, this was not as encouraged. Now I don't really believe we have this problem, at least not in North America. Though I think that you can maybe say that there are some challenges that you maybe encountered with your clients.
Yeah.
But as a father of two boys, I also don't agree with the rhetoric, and this is how I feel, and this is how a lot of parents who have boys feel, where sure, let's empower women, but this same rhetoric right now is almost being dismissed for boys.
That's sad. That's where I would say that shouldn't be the case. Empowering women doesn't mean you forget the little boys. You tell little boys and little girls you can grow up to become whoever you want to become. You can build whatever you want. And that I agree with you 100%. They should continue empowering little boys, but also chime in and encourage little girls.
I think we're discussing equality,
Yeah.
equality between, and you're going to see too, now you're going to have your girl, you're going to become a parent. You are already a parent as far as I'm concerned. But once your child comes to this world, you're going to see now the world is real. You're trying to protect them. You're trying to raise them
Yeah.
the best you can. And I feel like this has become a challenge for parents who have boys. And again, I think that discounting this reality for boys today is going to create consequences in the future. And what the rhetoric overall is when you discuss this, and it's almost, even for me, I want to discuss it, and I'm not afraid to talk my mind, as you know. Everyone who knows me
Go for
knows
it.
that, but I'm saying that in general, this discussion that we're having would be basically quantified as toxic masculinity when you're telling the boys, look, it's good, let's go play rough, let's go play sports, let's go do this or do that, because it is also, I feel, the responsibility of a father to show their boys and obviously allow them to explore however they want to explore.
Yeah.
But we are their role models.
Of course.
And as their role models, I want to show them, okay, well, what is it that traditional masculinity would be? Traditional masculinity now is paralleled with toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And this becomes a real problem.
This is a problem we're having with society in general right now. And I understand where you're coming from and the challenge, because probably the way you want to raise your kids might contradict with what they're telling them in schools and things like that. So
Not necessarily contradict, But again, they may blur the lines of reality
Yeah.
for kids in general today, where they say, "Oh well, you don't really need guidance; just do as you will."
Yeah.
And then someone might say, "What right do you have to instill these beliefs in your children?
But where does the
I'm their
parents' role come
parent.
in then? Exactly.
I mean, I think I have a
Of
role,
course.
and I feel as a father, especially if you have boys, well, I think that in a sense, if you have boys, the fathers would become more or less their role models. Not always, obviously, but I think that that is natural
Of course.
in the animal kingdom in general. I mean, let's toss aside the fact that yes, we have critical thinking now. We're human beings. We're no longer reactive in the sense, in the traditional sense, as our ancestors may have
Yeah.
been. But you know, and we have to really navigate this these days.
Yeah.
And I feel like this obviously you need to be hand in hand with your spouse.
Yeah.
With regards to any decision that you make. But I feel also, as much as you want to empower your daughter,
Yeah.
I feel also you'll want her in the future to have, once she gets married, I mean, whatever choices she makes, she doesn't have to get married, obviously.
She
I'm not,
chooses to
if she
get married,
chooses to
of
get
course.
married,
Yeah.
obviously, well, then you would also want her to be nurtured.
Of
You would want
course.
her to have somebody who's taking care of her
And who's
and
her partner in life?
who's her partner in life.
Of
And
course.
I think it's okay for certain tasks, just like you and your husband, just like me and my wife. We all have our roles.
Yeah.
What's our responsibility if we're not able to adhere to those roles?
As long I believe, listen, I believe marriage is a partnership and you make it whatever you want to make it. You decide two people coming together, you decide who does what, how you help, as long as it works for your household.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't even ever listen to society. And you decide how you want to raise your children. But my whole thing is now I'm having a daughter, yes, but if I were to have a boy, I would want him to feel as empowered as my little girl. I would want him to feel that he can do anything he wants to do in the world, as much like my little girl.
Exactly.
But in the last decades, little girls were not told that. So now we're kind of living the, what's left over of that, because now we're starting to raise our children differently.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're boys or girls, we're telling them they can do whatever they want. So I think the landscape of, entrepreneurship is going to change in the next decade or so.
And let me ask you, do you think that with this, and obviously, I mean, there is an answer and I have an opinion too, but with all of this, with the fact that women are entering, that landscape, the entrepreneurial landscape, the fact that they are taking on very important jobs in the corporate world as well, what impact do you think this has on families? Just that in and of itself, you are an entrepreneur as well. You're going to be a mother. You
Mom.
are a mother, and I think that that divide as a parent
Yeah.
is extremely difficult, whether or not you're a woman. I mean, it's difficult for men just as much as it is for women. But what does that do where the traditional roles in the homes used to be that there was the mom at home, and I'm not saying this was right, but that was her role, the housewife taking care of the kids. And obviously there was that bond with the mother, and it was a different bond than there was with the father back then. And maybe that extreme isn't good either, where I guess in a sense a woman who has more ambitions is kind of stuck in that role.
Yeah.
And I can understand how that could become an issue. But we see now, well, what's the consequence of that? You have smaller families.
Yep.
You don't have, those family dinners every night. As much as people try to make it a thing, including ourselves, and I'm sure including you, well, it becomes more difficult to do. So those traditional values, in a sense, they get diluted.
I understand that's your point of view, and I respect it completely. I will say, my mom was a stay-at-home mom while I was growing up, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I love that I would come back home from school at 3 or 4. I don't remember what time we used to finish, and my mom had a nice cooked meal, and then she would sit down with me and do my homework with me. I loved that. And I know some of my friends didn't have that luxury. Their moms were working moms, and
Right.
they would order takeout, and they wouldn't have as much, time to sit with their mom and do their homework. So I understand the traditional values, the nurture that a mother brings to a household is something so precious. And I believe strongly that the way my parents raised me made me who I am. And because they had this dynamic in the home. So I do understand that having a woman, a mom, if she has children, be an entrepreneur or a high executive or just have a corporate job, it changes the whole dynamic. But there's a couple of things. One, I think the world has evolved a lot, and nowadays having a single income or earner in the household is not even feasible anymore.
No.
Everything has become so much more expensive. We've created needs that didn't exist before. And so now most households, they have two working parents.
Mhm.
So already that comes from just society and how it's evolved over the years. The other bit where if a woman decides to launch her own business, so she has a working life, and it makes it more difficult, obviously, to manage the household, to manage the children, to be it's been it has, I believe, added more pressure on women,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And this is something I hope will change. I don't think it's something that can be easily changed, in complete honesty. Somehow, yes, it puts pressure on the father as well, but still always more on the mother. She has the mother guilt.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping it will evolve and more, I don't know, households or partnerships and marriages will find this balance between, both working and raising the children together. Maybe we haven't reached that balance yet. And that's why you feel that the values are being diluted. Maybe we haven't reached that balance in partnerships and marriages where the values stay intact, but it's just shared differently.
I think it's instrumental for couples to make those decisions to
Yeah.
make sure. And this is something I pride myself on. My wife and I, traditionally, we made in today's, by today's standards, people might say we're strict on our children. I don't think we're strict on our children at all.
Okay.
I think that we provide guidelines
Yeah.
for what they need to prepare themselves in society and the world.
Mhm.
The new age thinking of allowing children to just do anything at any time, I completely disagree with.
Yeah.
If my children are going to somebody's home, you better make sure they say hi.
Of course.
You better make sure they say bye. You better make sure that they say please and thank you. And that they communicate when they're looking at you, when they're discussing or if they're talking or asking anything. I tell my boys, you look at people in their eyes, you don't look down, you don't. And these are certain standards and values that I give. At the same time, I give them love. We give them, we really give them as much as we can. And
But
we
that
make
has
it a
nothing,
point.
like that hasn't changed, and you're both working. You're working parent, both of you, and you still manage to instill these values and to raise two amazing boys. Do you get what I mean? And it didn't change because your
That
wife
didn't
works.
change because my wife works. No.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that it does become a lot more challenging, both on my wife and myself, when we're trying to balance this.
Mm.
So, I'm not. Last night, I went back home a little bit early because Darian had to study. He had an exam today, and I have my own things to do. I have my own work, and my wife too. She's also taking care of the little one, so he has to study. So I had to make sure. Okay, I'm gonna get back home. I put a couple of things on the back burner. I got back home at like 6:37, and you're going through those exercises with your child. Now, after a 12-hour day, your patience level starts to kind of take its
Of
toll,
course, yeah.
right? So, unfortunately, as we were going through it, I got a little bit, more direct with him. I'm like, Darian, I'm like, come on, read that, right? But I catch myself in there, and I'm like, okay, you're tired. Don't take it out on the child. But what I'm saying is, we're all human, and those are certain challenges that come up because we're all trying to balance it. Now
because
we've
you're
got,
both working,
we're
because
both working.
this is the world we live in now. Most people are, they have to have
We're
2
both
hours.
working. But you know what? I have to say that I'm proud of what we've done as well. Not because she's my wife, not because I'm her husband. I think in general, there's a lot of couples that are making these concessions
Yeah.
and these efforts to maintain that. I don't want to say discipline, but yeah,
That healthy dynamic, that healthy
you need
discipline.
it.
Yeah.
An undisciplined child is an undisciplined adult.
And an undisciplined society.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me, so you're talking to a lot of women. I know that that's what you kind of specialize in.
Yeah.
And what is the challenges that they bring up? I mean, besides the challenge of the fact that you're telling me they're more risk averse or less confident
Yeah.
in positioning their point, do they feel pressure, outward pressure from society to perform?
That's a difficult question. I don't think they feel necessarily outward pressure. Okay, there's a couple of challenges, I would say. First, the outside pressure would come mainly when a lot of women that I work with are looking for funding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's unbelievable how the venture capital world and even angel investors, it's so still male dominated. You don't see a lot of VCs that are like run by women.
No.
I know there's some that have, you're laughing at me smiling now.
I'm not. No, I am.
But I don't know if you have come across, but there are very few women that work in VC firms. And so most of the time it's extremely intimidating. I've went and pitched some clients of mine to VCs or angel investor funds, and it's very intimidating because most of the people there are male. They're used to seeing male entrepreneurs coming and launching and doing their pitches for startups. So it can be intimidating. So women have that challenge of, you know what? Having that self-confidence to go ahead, pitch, and not be scared to fundraise. Because a lot of women just want to, we call it bootstrapping. They want to put in their own money, whatever they make of their business, put it back into the business. But at one point, you need sometimes external funding to grow and to really expand your business.
Is that their biggest challenge?
It's not the biggest. That's to answer your question about what kind of pressure they feel.
The dynamic of today's society has its own challenges, I think, for both genders. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But I think you have a certain experience because you deal with so many different women entrepreneurs, especially. I mean, do you also deal with men entrepreneurs, or is it?
I do actually. I've had clients that are male entrepreneurs. I mean, I don't turn down anybody that wants to work with me, of course. I really base myself more on the client and the vibe with the client.
Of course.
But I have focused more on women because, as you said, I worked a little bit all over the world in the Middle East, in Europe, and in North America. And I faced as a woman a lot of challenges in my corporate life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my blog, The Rebel Chronicles, stems from, because of all my challenges as a woman. And I started wanting to write about my experiences and share my own advice. And it kind of like trickled down into entrepreneurship as I started getting approached by more and more women entrepreneurs with my business background, my finance background. And that's how I kind of not deviated, but I think I started working with women entrepreneurs. And that became kind of like my specialty, I would say.
Right.
But of course, male entrepreneurs, I love working with them too. I don't discriminate, of course.
No, of course not.
Strong word, huh?
Nor would I think you do.
No, of course not.
I've seen you, especially in the landscape of women in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
So, I guess that was my curiosity. Now, what would you say is one of the bigger challenges that women face today as entrepreneurs?
There are quite a few challenges. And I think entrepreneurs in general face a lot of these, but I've noticed a trend among women entrepreneurs.
Okay.
First, it's a lot of self-doubt. A lot of women I talk to, they have a great business idea. They have the expertise. And I tell them, just go for it. Just start. Yet
Right.
they doubt themselves. They're like, oh, no, I'll wait until, I don't know, next year. Or I don't know what they're waiting for, to like see someone that would potentially like want to sign onto their product or their service right away. But you know what? You need to start somewhere. And if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't take that risk, you're never going to make it. Success starts with the first step. So self-doubt is something I've noticed with a lot of female entrepreneurs. Even I get self-doubt. That's normal. I think
all do.
we all do. But I've noticed it a lot among women. And I think, and this is something we've discussed in the past, I think the last few decades, things have changed, but historically, little girls were not as encouraged as little boys to really go for their dreams. They were always told, study and make sure, you find a good husband and you raise a family. Boys were told more, you need to succeed, you need to take care of your family, you need to be good in business. So a lot of women my age and older still have that self-doubt. They're not sure.
Go ahead.
They're not sure that they can achieve anything that they want to achieve. And so that, I think the self-doubt still comes from that place historically, but things are changing, obviously. Now, I want my little girl to know that she could do anything she would want to in this world. If I have a little boy, I would want the same for my little boy as well.
I totally understand that. I think it's extremely important to empower women, to empower little girls, to tell them that they can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Maybe this dialogue did not exist as much back in our day.
Back in the day, yeah.
However, on that note, what we see today is the reverse for boys. I feel it a lot more as a father of boys, and I'm not alone in this. I've talked, we see a lot of parents who have boys, and this is a discussion that we have where it's okay to have, to tell a boy, it's okay to have masculine traits. It's okay to be masculine and not equate that to toxic masculinity. And I feel that that's a part of the bigger issues that we have today, is that the moment you start to push this notion of masculinity with boys, suddenly it's toxic masculinity. Don't try to guide them. Let them find their way. No, I'm a parent. I have to guide my children.
Of course.
And I have to allow them to explore. Allow them that side. Allow them to be curious. But at the same time, you need to correct falsehoods. You need to correct things that need to be corrected.
And provide some sort of guidance also. Or else we're going to end up with a society running the world when you and I would be, old geezers, that is completely confused and directionless, right? That is too floating around and not ambitious and and you see that already, honestly, with younger generations. A lot of them are a little bit lost. They're a little bit, they just want to explore, but they don't really know what they want anymore or what to go for.
They lack drive.
Drive, exactly, drive. And I don't want that for my little girl, and I know for sure you don't want that for your little boys.
No.
So I completely disagree with the whole idea of, don't tell them this and don't tell them that. Of course, you're letting them live free, but you're encouraging them. You're telling them it's okay to want things. It's okay to try things.
That's exactly
right. And this is what I think needs to be for boys and girls, of course.
Yes, I think it's important. And that's where I think it's important to remember that boys will, and that's what I think, and that's what I believe. I believe boys are going to have real challenges when they become adolescents because of this notion of, in lack of a better word, almost emasculating boys right now. And I draw an extreme picture because it can become extreme if you let it go. Because yes, you're going to be a parent now. You are a parent as far as I'm concerned. But when your child grows up, you're going to see they're going to be exposed to so much.
Yep.
And yes, it's my job as a parent to guide them, to do everything I can do for them. And I will. Okay?
I have no doubt about that.
As you will. At the same time, you start to recognize that a lot of the time that they're going to spend are going to be with their friends,
Yep.
with school, and there are things that are out of your control in terms of what you're going to do. Now, there's homeschooling and there is a lot of different types of education.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a whole trend in homeschooling now.
It is a trend.
I think because people want to have more control over what they can,
Yes, because
tell
I
their
feel
kids.
like even the education systems are starting to take over in a way they shouldn't necessarily take
Yeah.
over.
They're crossing over into
Your
not just education,
educators,
but they're crossing into almost like, I don't know how to say it, like life and personal choices.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you that there will be challenges for both boys and girls, but maybe more so for boys if things are shifting. But that brings me back that self-doubt in general is a huge challenge a lot of entrepreneurs face.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to start young. You start with your boys now, encouraging them, making them believe or realize, actually not making them believe, but making them realize they can do whatever they want. And this will go with them through life. This will stay with them when they're in their 20s and they decide to launch their first startup or to go for their first corporate job. And so this is an aspect I've noticed among a lot of women, the self-doubt. If you allow me to just mention something else I've noticed among entrepreneurs, is that a lot of entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs that I've worked with, have a brilliant idea. They actually go ahead and they get started. And I always say at least start with day one. It's the first step to success. But they are all over the place. There's some sort of freedom that you get from entrepreneurship that, you don't get from the corporate world. Corporate world is so square. It's 9 to 5. It's you have a boss. There's a hierarchy. There's tasks you're assigned to. With entrepreneurship, you get to tap into your creative mind. You get flexibility. You get to do things that you would have never done. You get to try out things you've never tried before. Skills, expertise, different contexts. So entrepreneurs become a little bit like overly excited, I would say. And they lose focus sometimes of their initial idea. They don't have a plan in place.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, one day I want to sell this product. The next day they'll be like, oh, and what about if I offer this service along with this product? Or what if I sell it not just online, but I also start putting it in boutiques, and they lose their focus.
Right.
And this is where my job as a consultant comes in, to bring them back to their focus and to make sure they have a plan in place.
And that's really, really important what you're telling me, because a lot of entrepreneurs may have great ideas. They may be unable to execute properly. And that is extremely, extremely important in any business. And there are certain skills that I have, you have, but we can't do it all.
Impossible.
And you need to be willing, and this is somewhere that I have had challenges, but you have to be willing to let go of some of the control
And to delegate.
and to delegate.
Because you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You are an entrepreneur and you seem to do it all. But I'm sure you have people that help you in the background.
I do. I do have people who help me in the background, but I have gotten feedback from these people and saying, you need to let go of some
You're a control freak.
I am a bit of a control freak. And I've been doing well. I mean, look, I'm still micromanaging. I'm not going to lie. I'm still micromanaging, but it's because I need things to be done a certain way. And I know you've heard this before.
Listen,
sure
I have
you've
the same
heard this.
personality, so I get it.
So I get that. I get that you need to, but I've learned that it is important to let people do things the way that they're going to do it. No one's going to do it exactly like me. I may not be perfect myself, but I'm used to, there's something that works, and I'm in a business that is service oriented.
Yep.
It's all me. My clients want to work with Puria.
Yep.
So anything that goes beyond me, if I'm delegating something, I have to make sure that it does not impact
Your
my
image.
image or my clients
Yep,
who come first
of course.
at the end of the day. So it's interesting because that is one of the challenges in entrepreneurship is learning where to let go, learning where to delegate, how to delegate, where to spend the money.
You need to, as an entrepreneur, always focus on what you do best.
Yes.
You focus on what you do best. Everything else is peripheral, and everything else you can technically delegate. If you have the resources for it, you delegate. But you need to be able to focus on where you add the most value, because that's how you'll grow your business.
But the product industry is very different from the service industry.
Totally agree.
And this is where the challenge lies, I think, for people who are in the service industry, who need to kind of navigate that, especially in our business, in real estate, where it's so personal, that relationship. Let me ask you now, you have traveled 7 countries.
Worked in 7 countries.
Sorry.
Worked.
You
I've traveled. I don't
traveled
even know how many countries I've traveled to, but yeah.
I apologize. You have worked in 7 countries.
Yes.
And that in and of itself is impressive. Now tell me, what was it first that made you want to move to begin with? Is it just the notion of working with different cultures was fascinating, or was it because somehow something led you, I think, to the Middle East or Europe? I think you've done a
Actually, what made me leave the comfort of my home in Montreal with my lovely parents, all my amazing friends, including your sister, I've always felt this kind of like, I don't know I can't sit still. I always wanted more. I wanted to see the world. So when I graduated from McGill in finance, I had done an exchange program in the south of France.
Okay.
And that already gave me the travel bug. So I was like, you know what? When I'm done McGill, I'm working in Paris. And everyone's like, how are you going to get a job in Paris? I applied, I think, to 100 jobs. I finally ended up getting an internship.
Okay.
I got paid 450 euros a month, which was nothing. And I lived in a little chambre de bonne, so they call it like a maid room under the roof of a home in Paris.
Okay.
But I made my dream come true and I moved to Paris.
How long were you there?
For that internship, 1 year. And I was living near the Champs-Élysées, famous Champs-Élysées, and my job was on the Champs-Élysées. And that experience changed the course of my life. The next 15 years of my career led me to who I married, to everything I've done. So I think that travel bug, that need for adventure is what made me move. And so I moved to Paris. That led me to getting a great job opportunity in London. The same company I worked for there in the finance world sent me to Paris again, to Switzerland and Geneva, and then to New York for 3 years. I got to experience the 2008 financial crisis in New York. That was a whole experience in itself.
I can just imagine.
Yep. Seeing your colleagues walk out with, boxes on a daily basis. It was quite something. I was very young then, and it was quite a shock. But it was a great experience in itself, living in New York and working in New York. And then I moved to Dubai with the same company. And I worked in Dubai for 7 years. So that was my first, I would say, taste of living in the Middle East. I'm Lebanese of origin, but I had never lived really in Lebanon. So being in the Middle East was a really cool experience. I met my husband in Lebanon via, during my executive MBA classes, moved to Lebanon, Beirut for 3 years. And, as you know, there was the massive explosion on the 4th of August, 2020 in Beirut.
And you were there.
I was there.
You're in Lebanon. I mean, you're working there. You're married at this point too.
We're not married, but we're engaged.
Okay, you're engaged. And you're doing your day-to-day. You're going about your work. It is COVID. I think it's different.
But it wasn't a regular day. It was COVID. And most people left Beirut, like the center of the city, really early because of COVID. Most people were not going to the office, or they were finishing work
people
early.
Were at home. So
people were up in their mountain houses, a lot of them. So Beirut City was way emptier than it would usually be. It would have been catastrophic, actually, if it weren't the pandemic, because most people would still be in their jobs, would still be at the office.
You were still in Beirut.
I was still in Beirut because my house was there. My apartment was 500 meters away from the site of the explosion. And I took the day off that day and I went for a beach day. I just came back. I'm in my apartment.
So you're going for a beach day.
I went for a beach day, came back. It was 6 p.m.
So you're outside. You're going for a beach day. You're going by your day to day. You're expecting it to be any other day.
Yeah.
And I get back home.
I get back home. I'm up in
doing
my
your
apartment with my little dog,
And suddenly,
Jiggy. No, suddenly I have a craving for ice cream.
okay.
So I have a craving for ice cream, and that's what saved me. Ice cream saved my life. I call my, fiance at the time, Joseph, and I'm like, I want ice cream. Can we order ice cream? I had this like habit of ordering ice cream. In Lebanon, you can order anything to your house, even like shisha. So I said, I want to order ice cream. And he said, no,
Is that a
no.
craving of yours now in your pregnancy?
Actually, no, interestingly.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
So he's on his way back and he's like, oh, I'm just past the port and there's like a fire going on. He didn't know what happened. He was just in front. And he's getting home and he's like, you know what? I'm going to pick you up from downstairs and we're going to go get ice cream. I was like, okay, fine. He's like, get dressed, go downstairs. And he like lied to me as always, so he doesn't have to wait in the street. So he told me he was there, even though he was not there. He was turning the corner with his windows rolled down. And I was downstairs, standing with my phone, shorts, a t-shirt, flip-flops. And I just feel a big boom. And suddenly it went from day to night. And I looked down. I'm covered in blood, covered in glass. All the buildings seemed like destroyed around me. I hear screams from people. I turn around. I'm like, oh, I see my building like half destroyed. I was like, oh my God, there was an explosion in my building. I thought it was directly in my building. And then I saw everyone all around me. I saw people covered in blood on the street. And my mind just went like blank. And we didn't know what was happening. So first thing I did was, I saw Joseph, my fiance at the time. He was okay. He had his windows rolled down. So the impact of the explosion made his car jump up and down, but he was physically okay. And I just tried to get up to my apartment. The ceiling was collapsed. Got to my apartment. It was completely destroyed. Found my little dog, who got saved by his crate because his crate protected him, made him obviously he flew out of the crate, but he was covered in glass. I picked him up. And
So in the moment
Yeah.
where it went, where were you?
standing in the street, looking across at this Italian restaurant that was in front of my building. And I could see the waiter. He heard the sound of something above us. And I saw him look at me, our eyes locked. And I saw the fear in his eyes. And I could just picture in my head, I could still picture in my head, he in slow motion, like he was running into the building to protect himself. And I was like, what does he do? And I didn't have time to even think. The explosion happened. Yeah. And it was mayhem. We went to the hospital. Obviously, it's impossible to reach hospitals. People were just all over.
I'm sure that the sentiment, and in that moment, you don't know what happened.
We had no idea what was happening.
And unfortunately, this is also a country that has been war-ridden in the past.
Of course, yeah.
So naturally, did that go through your mind to say, oh my God,
It's a war.
did we just get bombed?
Well, people were yelling in the street, take shelter. Take shelter. And I was like, okay. I was like, take shelter. And I was like, but where am I going to take shelter? Everything's destroyed. I didn't know where to go. I was trying to get into the building in front, but I was like, it's destroyed. What am I supposed to do? So yeah, in that moment, you don't know what to do, what to think. You just think survive.
And what kind of an impact did that have on you personally in general? Personally and professionally after this incident, what went through your mind? Did that notion of how precious life is really,
Yeah.
did that come into play afterwards? And did that
course.
change the way you do things?
Definitely the weeks after were quite like traumatic. It just, I couldn't get it out of my head what had happened. Felt like out of a movie. Like you never think you would experience. You see it on TV in the media. You never think it's going to happen to you. That
No.
you'll be in the middle of a massive, third biggest non-nuclear explosion in the world. It never come to my mind. Already, it was for me, I think what I needed to finally move back to Montreal, because I was like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to come back home and to be safe.
It was time, yeah.
That's what made us pack our bags and leave 3 weeks later. But it did make me realize, I'm like, any moment could be my last. I better make sure the life I'm living is the life that I want. People live often for later. They live for their retirement. They live for the first million that they'll make. They live for when they'll get married. They live for things that are going to come later on. When you don't even know if these things will happen, or even if you'll be alive to experience them, you have to live for now.
Yes.
Make sure your every day, you're living the life you want to live and you enjoy it fully. And that's what it made me realize. So I try to stick to that motto in my life, but obviously we all get like, wrapped in the routine and the hustle and every day. But I always try to remind myself, like, no, you know what? I want to make sure I'm living the happiest life I can live.
I think all of us really make that a point too. Life is so fast paced though.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, it's even more fast paced. And as a parent, then it becomes even more fast paced. And then this is where that balance comes into play. Everybody, before having children, I didn't truly understand it. And you will thankfully experience this as well. But you need to try and balance that work life even more when you have kids, because you are an integral component of their life.
Yep.
And you really only have a couple of years to create that base for your children. You don't have all that much time. And maybe that is one of the things that I think back to sometimes. And I think while I was building my business, I tried to go back and forth, and I think I succeeded. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that I got it perfectly. And for me, I think that is an instrumental thing as a parent, is that you want to make sure that you're there for your kids, you're giving them the right base, you're being a good role model for them, you're guiding them properly in life as well.
I think kids force you to slow down. They force you to kind of...
I don't know about that.
No? Okay, maybe I have a misconception.
No,
But
yeah.
certain moments, like when you see through their eyes, when they're mesmerized by something,
Yeah.
don't you take a moment there and you're like, you know what? I take this for granted every single day.
Yes. And that happens to me.
Yeah.
It happens to me because I'm so involved in my business. And as you know, my business never
Never stops.
stops.
Yep.
So I don't just clock out. Things happen. There have been many days, many evenings where I'm up till 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Wow.
Just trying to get one thing done after another. Sometimes I'm even negotiating till midnight. It happens. And those are realities. Now, what's the divide between providing for your family and being present for your family? That has been a challenge that I still face. And with time, I think, you're saying you slow down. The thing that happens, and now we're talking about I think, not necessarily the differences between men and women, but I think that this happens to men more than it happens to women, where men are like, wow, I have a mouth to feed.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 mouths to feed. And then maybe you have 3 mouths to feed. And then that's a very real thing for you. You're like, I need to get my things together. I have to
Now,
get my shit together.
most of the time, you need both parents to work because life has become so expensive to feed those mouths.
100%. And you're talking about women empowerment, women entrepreneurship. Women have taken on many roles in the corporate structure of things. And in general, we have more and more women entrepreneurs. So trying to balance that in a family has become more difficult.
Yep.
And we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that it doesn't have some form of an impact versus what traditional values were, such as going home every night and having supper, being at the table. How was your day? Those types of things aren't not going to happen because we still try to make it a point to do that, but it becomes more challenging.
They've evolved, I would say. Like things have, like I always say, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I personally love that. I love that I could get home at 3 or 4 o'clock and there would be a nice home cooked meal for me. Then she would sit and do my homework with me. And nowadays it's very rare to have a stay-at-home mom because not just of choices women make or couples make, but also because life has become so expensive. So you need, most often than not, both parents to be working. So the values are still there in a lot of households.
Lifestyle you want too, right?
Depends on the lifestyle also, of course, and the sacrifices and the choices you make as a couple. But
Seems Middle Easterns can't sacrifice their lifestyle, though.
I know,
right?
I know. We have that problem. We want the fancy car and the nice house and everything.
Lebanese or Persian, I think.
I think we're very similar in that aspect. But it's like a balancing act. You, like you said, like both you and your wife work, but I'm sure at home you make it a point to still have family dinner. You still make it a point to help your kids study. It's different than how it was back then, but the values are still there, and you've just accommodated to your reality.
Yes, you accommodate to your reality, but you have to be so disciplined to do this properly. And there are days where we get it and we really hit the hammer on the nail. And then there are other days where you're not getting it as good. Something happens. I have suddenly a negotiation I have to take care of. I have, or she has a work affair that she has to take care of. And then, well, suddenly we may not be able to have that dinner that evening. And it's okay. I think that comes as a part of, that balancing act that we're trying to achieve. But those traditional types of values that we used to see more on a regular in the past, perhaps we're going to see this kind of get diluted more and more and more. Now, is it a good or bad thing? I think that there is some good to it. There is some bad to it.
Of course.
It's important to
everything.
Balance those two things and see what's the best for your family. What is it that you're trying to implement for your family? What values do you want to instill in your children?
Every family is unique. And as long as you make things happen for you and your family and your partnership, that's what matters, regardless of what society says or is trying to impose or brainwash people with. You do what works for you guys,
And everyone is different, right? And we need to always remember, as you will, as I do, when you become a parent, you're not just a role model. This is the legacy that you want to continue for your family.
Yep.
So it's so important what you're doing. So as a father, there are certain things that I want to teach my children. And yes, I want to teach my children to be men without having this come back to me as this is toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I get that.
No. If I'm teaching my boys to be men, it doesn't need to equate to toxic masculinity just because I'm trying to teach them traditional male values. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not even going to get into this whole, identity problem that we have these days with children. But this is a part of it, is when you start diluting facts, where you start fictionalizing facts, then it becomes problematic when you think that this can be diluted and it's okay to go in and not guide your children according to what values you believe in. Every family is different. But this is so instrumental, I think, to determine what that is. And the couples themselves have to see eye to eye to it.
Of course.
And, you need to also have some kind of balance in the sense that the other party, or like when you have a couple, one party or another needs to be able to balance the other person. What I mean by this is that sometimes maybe I'm going to do something that my wife's like, maybe you could take it easy a little bit. Maybe you don't need to do this, right? And we don't necessarily look at that or think this way because our perspective isn't quite there. But the perspective of your partner is important.
Yep.
And it grounds you sometimes.
Of course.
But our children even ground us
course.
sometimes, right? Sometimes our children will tell us things and I'm like, you know what, you're
No,
right.
you're right. Yeah. We learn from our children, right?
Absolutely. I think from the day they're born, you learn from them.
I'm excited to go on that
I'm
journey.
excited for you. I think it's so great. And I had my children quite young, so navigating that at that young age was a little bit more difficult because really I'm trying to establish my business at the same time as being a father, a new father. And it was good in a sense in the early days with my older one, especially because I felt like I had more time with him. I had more time to do things. And I still remember that. I remember enjoying those moments. But with the younger one, there was less time because my business was just growing.
Growing up and running, yeah.
And if there's one thing maybe I can weigh in on is those first couple of years, they go by
So
so
fast.
fast. So fast. And I heard this even when I was having my kids, right? Like people were telling me the time goes so fast. Yes, I understand. And I kept telling myself, okay, fine. I understand. Time passes fast. But at the same time, we need to be able to navigate our lives, our businesses, but you don't really understand it till that time is gone.
There's no perfect formula.
No.
I think each person needs to do it their way, and we need to just be like less hard on ourselves, honestly.
Tell me, Dana, now having worked in these 7 countries, empowering women, empowering entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
and empowering both women and men entrepreneurs.
Of course,
to your point.
always.
What's the takeaway with everything, with what's going on with the future, with the current landscape of business and entrepreneurship? What is the one thing that you would want women to hold themselves to, and even men to hold themselves to? But really, because I know that we're talking about women today, so I want to look at the challenges that you've seen and what they need to focus on moving forward.
Honestly, my key message always to anyone I meet that has a desire to do something for themselves is if you have an idea or a dream and you're able to work 9 hours a day for an employer, then you can dedicate some time, 2 hours a day, to build something of your own and to not be scared to go for it. Most people don't launch their businesses not because they don't have the time or the resources or the money or the support or any of that. They don't go for it because they're too scared.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the biggest takeaway. Afterwards, of course, I touched upon some of the challenges. Have a plan in place, put a business plan in place, figure out whether what you want to sell or the service you want to provide, there's an actual need for it. Figure out how you're going to market it, how you're going to reach your target clientele. Those are all semantics and things you can work on eventually. But the first step is to actually have the guts and the courage to try. Even if you fail, you will at least have tried and you will have never have any regrets. And who knows, maybe the second time you'll try is the time you'll succeed. So that's my biggest takeaway from all my experiences, all my personal experiences, and all the people I've worked with.
That's really great advice. I really want to ask you, because I know that you got yourself something in Spain, where you got yourself a little waterfront condo, I believe it is.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, being in real estate, obviously I'm fascinated by these things. Tell me how that journey was.
Well, first of all, this was a condo I bought in Spain. Anything that's Montreal related, the best guy in the world is Puri Ansari, okay?
Thank you.
So let's just make this clear, okay?
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Secondly, okay, I told you I have this like travel bug in me and I love to explore and I'm such an adventurer at heart. I've always dreamt of a place abroad, a vacation home. But most people think of a vacation home as a retirement plan. They're like, they think first, let's buy local And then once I have enough money or I'm retired or I don't know what, I'll buy a vacation home abroad in Europe and Mexico and I don't know where.
Sure.
But I'm the type of like live for now, especially after what I experienced also with the explosion. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wait till I'm too old to enjoy it
No, of
to
course.
buy a vacation home.
No.
So Joseph and I did our wedding in Barcelona a few years ago, and we went and did our honeymoon in Malaga, in the southern coast of Spain. We really loved Malaga. Malaga is a whole province, but Malaga city itself is an old town. It's so charming. It's, coastal by the Mediterranean. People are lots of fun. The food is delicious. And it's honestly like a wonderful place. So we fell in love with Malaga, and we jokingly said a few years ago, well, let's buy a place in Malaga one day. But most people say that, right? When they go on vacation,
course.
they even you'll stroll in front of the local real estate shop.
I'm still
And
talking about my condo in Miami. I'm like, we gotta go get ourselves that condo in Miami. I tell my wife sometimes.
but you have to do it now. So we let that idea go, obviously, like most people do. And then exactly 1 year ago. Oh my God. I think like today we were in the Bahamas and we were walking on the beach and we met these like lovely British people who told us that they have a home on the beach. It's we were in Newport,
Okay.
Bahamas. And we said, oh, and how come, how do you you work in England? How come you have a place here? They're like, oh, we come here a few times a year and then we rent it out Airbnb the rest of the time, like short-term rental. I said, oh, really? That's interesting. And I looked at my husband. I'm like, well, why don't we just buy a place in Malaga and we rent it out short-term and we keep it as our vacation home? I don't know why. It's such a simple idea,
Right.
but people don't always think about it.
Right.
And he made the big mistake of telling me, okay, whatever, do some research. Well, you just need to tell me do research. And I was laying on the beach in the Bahamas. Within one day, I set up all of our appointments for when we come back home to Canada with a real estate agent, with a lawyer, with a mortgage facilitator for foreigners. I literally set up all our meetings.
What was the down payment amount? What was the requirement?
The requirements. So, and surprisingly, it's not that hard as a foreigner to buy property in Spain. You can get a mortgage. We used a mortgage facilitator to help us. So he kind of gathers our requirements, does a proposal, tells us how much we could borrow, and then they go shopping around to various Spanish banks.
Right.
So in general, as a foreigner, you can borrow up to 70% of a property's value. So you need to put 30% down payment.
That's it.
That's it. And in general, property prices, depending where though, in Malaga, they are way lower than here. I'm sorry, Puria, but they are way lower. And you get like a,
That's fine.
Mediterranean facing property. Municipality taxes, condominium fees, all of that are a fraction of what you would pay
And you're
here.
allowed to do the Airbnbs.
And
all
you
of that.
are.
And
So
somebody's managing that for you.
exactly. So I set all those calls up. They made us a mortgage proposal, and we booked a flight. Literally 3 weeks later, went to Malaga, picked our property, and a few months later, we had it all wrapped up. It was ours. It's a wonderful sea view apartment that we rent out for short-term rentals via a property manager that I found in Malaga, and it's more common than you would think. There are so many Canadians, Americans, Europeans that own properties there. It's kind of considered the south for Europeans.
Would you consider that the investment pays for itself in the sense that your monthly payments with your mortgages and what you gain in revenue on
Yep.
Airbnb can take
Exactly, take care of the mortgage. And obviously the first few months we had to fix it up. We bought a furnished place, but we needed to fix a few things here and there. So you put a lot of money in, and we had to pay our lawyer.
Okay.
But after that, the mortgage pays for itself. It gets well maintained by the property manager. Whenever we go to Spain, we have our home. And I honestly find it was an amazing investment and an amazing life goal that I had that we made happen. And thanks to what we did, we have 2 friends that went and bought right after us. We gave them the process that we followed, they followed the exact same process with the same contacts, and they've both bought properties 5 minutes away from us.
Well, I'm going to get more information from you about that. And then if anybody wants to buy some real estate in Spain, well, I'm going to have an
They can
insight.
contact me, of course.
Of
And if they want
course.
to just visit Malaga, we have our property, obviously.
Condo.
Wonderful little condo for 2 to 4 people. So I strongly suggest to like
What?
just check it out.
Maybe we'll pass by with the kids.
You are more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank
Honestly.
you. It was great having you, Dana. Thank you so much for making
Thank
the
you,
time.
Puria. It was such a pleasure chatting with
Pleasure
you.
was all mine. I mean, we discussed a couple of things. I think that it was okay. You
It
had
was a
some
great
fun with it,
chat. Yeah.
right? We didn't get too controversial.
No, we tried to, be
I don't want to be too controversial.
no. But we want to say the truth also. And we want to speak our
I'm not
minds
afraid to speak my mind.
Me
I'm gonna
neither.
say it as it is. I know you're not either.
at all. So honestly, I really enjoyed our chat. And I think we should do this more often. I loved it.
Absolutely. We're going to redo it.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much, Dana. Thanks
Thanks,
for being
Puria.
here. And we're having fun with it. Guys, Spain. If you
Yep.
want to go to Spain, she's got her condo.
Yep.
Send me the link. Send me all
I'll
the
send
stuff.
you the link. I'll send you everything.
All right, guys. Well, see you next time. Episode 4 is a wrap.